seemingly illogical actions, kind of a metalogical rationale, signaling heuristics under limited cognitive ability, that sort of thing.
I just threw around a lot of fancy words over there. Welcome to Trekkie Tuesday.
Today's episode, the Galileo Seven. This episode has historical significance. The most obvious thing is that this may be where we get the term space shuttle. They call them like space ferries.
Ferries. Like, not like a flying ferry.
Well, like, indeed like a flying ferry.
But like, spelled like.
Not Tinker. Kirk is rushing to get desperately needed medical supplies to a plague-ridden area. But there's this higher-up bureaucrat on board who is really into him getting the medical supplies. So just to annoy him, he decides to delay. Really just to annoy him, but under the excuse that they need to stop and do science on this quasar-like phenomenon that they've found.
I don't think it's just to annoy him. I think Kirk is genuinely interested in exploring new worlds, but I think he just has really low priorities. I mean, we have this guy who just seems like such an annoying guy. He wears this weird outfit. His eyes are like freakishly blue to the point where you're like, ew, he looks weird. And you just don't like him. But at the same time, he's totally making sense. I mean, there are people literally dying, and Kirk knows this, but he's just kind of like, but I want to go over there. There's no depth of knowledge in space travel. It's really all about the breadth, apparently. It's really less about understanding something and more about claiming that they've been there. You can't see the whole planet in 2 days, which ends up being a problem.
Kirk decides that to study this phenomenon, he's going to send out a shuttlecraft with 7 people on it, 3 of whom are the senior officers in their particular area. He puts his chief medical officer, his chief engineer, and the first officer Spock all on the same shuttlecraft to go, collect readings remotely.
Why would you do that?
And so, like, immediately, just within 2 seconds, something goes wrong on the shuttle. Everybody but Spock is really lackadaisical about it. Like, Spock says, "Stop, momentum," and the guy's like, "Oh, where's that button? Oh, it's behind me." He turns around, presses the one button, turns back, and says, "Oh, that didn't do anything." It makes no effort to, like, figure anything out. So obviously they crash land on one luckily inhabitable planet in the center of this massive radiation field that they're investigating. So we've got this very repetitious plot with Kirk trying and failing to find these people and bickering with the commissioner. But the main action is on this planet that they crash landed on. And it's about the tensions that develop between Spock and the rest of the 7. They're attacked by natives of the planet.
Which are like these giant cavemen-y type things that throw these really ridiculous spears.
So everybody wants to blast the creatures, but Spock, because in addition to having a different approach to epistemic rationality, he also has a different sense of ethics, says that they should not blast the creatures. Like, every decision that Spock makes, aside from leaving the guy out in the middle of nowhere to die for no reason, I still agree with it. But he doesn't always do the best job of defending his decisions, because he doesn't really care what the humans think.
I mean, this episode ultimately is just about Spock and what it's like to be sort of stuck in rationality and making decisions not from an emotional standpoint, and how that's really something that distances you from other people. It doesn't always work, and then people get doubly angry because it didn't even come from like a good place in his heart. It just came from where he thought was the best choice in his brain. But in the end, he saves everybody. Like, the last scene, he, is explaining his viewpoint, and everyone just thinks it's so hilarious, and it looks so forced. It's like the entire crew is laughing like at Spock in some ways, like in a playful way, but it just looks so ridiculous because it's not really that funny to the like, and I think it just doesn't work because we ultimately side more with Spock. And I don't think that's just because of us. I think everybody who would watch this would ultimately be like, well, Spock did the right thing in every step of the way. And I wonder if that was like a new thing for television and for media really in general, was to see this logical hero, right? Not somebody who wins everything with his heart and is on Team Gryffindor. I think ultimately Spock is one of the most lovable characters of Star Trek. It's just one of these things where you really are sort of down to the wire. You think everyone's going to die. You see the smoke like in the shuttle as it's burning up. It's a good episode, which you can tell I don't always say. It doesn't quite pass the Bechdel test, but there's some like decent women saving the day, I think, throughout it.
I feel like the yeoman's name, for all we can tell, is yeoman. Everybody else gets called by their name, but the woman in the yellow,
she doesn't contribute much at all.
She comments that it's hot when they're burning.
Yeah,
up.
She really is not a good character. Scotty is pretty cool in this episode. He's always pretty cool. I think he sort of speaks for the audience in a lot of ways.
Spock is trapped by a boulder, and they have to get away right away, and so he shouts at them to leave him, and they have to disobey his orders to rescue them. So that's a demonstration that yes, his ideals really really are what he says they are. He's willing to sacrifice himself, and if you're familiar with the later Star Trek universe, the more famous instances of Spock sacrificing himself for the good of the many. I feel like any of the other captains would have been like, okay, we have a dilemma here, we need to figure out a way of honoring all of our responsibilities, but no, not Kirk. Spock's allegedly emotional decision at the end, it relies on Kirk being irrational, and previously he's been working over the assumption that everybody else is going to act rationally. Because it's only going to work if Kirk has delayed the rendezvous and sacrificed the good of the many. And he seems a little down on himself for it. He feels afterwards like the action was questionable. But maybe that's more about that he doesn't like the way his action paints his impression of Kirk. The fact that he thinks it's even at all a possibility that Kirk would still be there doesn't, in his value system, speak very highly of Kirk.
I think if you're going to tease Spock about something, I think you would want to tease Spock about the fact that if it weren't for the fact that his crew members acted totally illogically by saving his life, none of their lives would have been saved. The end.